Chapter 1. The christening party was a disaster. Her parents had done everything right, and yet the princess was delightful. She smiled and burbled at all the visitors. Everybody who was anybody crowded into the ballroom. The amphibs of whom were there, as was the Princess Sopo. Even Charmant and his cream were dancing a glittering path through the guests. The tiny fountain flowed with wine, and tables groaned under the weight of the food. The gifts were many and diverse, quite suitable for the honor of a firstborn princess. There were the usual gems and gold, as well as some more unusual gifts. A ring that was clearly magical, though no one knew quite what it did, and a pouch which could hold all the new princess's needs, and yet only have one nurse to carry it. The problem was in the small stack of pleasantly worded cards from the fairy community. They all extended best wishes, etc., and some even granted gifts like grace and beauty. But none of the fairies came, not even the one the proud parents had carefully not invited. Her parents looked at each other with dismay. The poor princess! She was not going to be enchanted. How could they possibly make a proper match for her if she had no enchantment to be broken by prospective suitors? The king put his arm around the queen and tried to comfort her. "We will think of something. After all, she's only a baby," the king said. But the queen was inconsolable. "My poor baby, what is going to happen to her? She's a princess without an enchantment. We will be the laughingstock of the kingdoms." The queen peeked out over her king's shoulder. "Look at that Princess Sobo. She looks so smug. I'll never be able to go out in public again." Yet, she was a queen, so she pulled herself together and was gracious and confident as she said her farewells, even to the Princess Sopo. When the castle was empty again, the princess was taken up to her nursery, where her nurses had their own little celebration and made a huge fuss over the bright little girl. They didn't care about enchantments or spells. All they knew was that the Princess Alexandra was a beautiful baby. She smiled and laughed at them, then went quietly to sleep. The king and queen called an emergency meeting of their council. They discussed options until the early hours of the morning, yet in the end they could only wait and see what happened. As the weeks passed, everybody could see that the princess was a perfectly normal baby, which of course was the whole problem. Finally, the royal couple decreed that nobody was to raise the princess's lack with the little girl herself on pain of exile, and set themselves to come up with some way of solving the dilemma. After all, they had 16 years. Alexandra learned to crawl and then to walk. She got into mischief and had all her nurses wrapped around her tiny finger. She began talking and never stopped. She asked questions which had the royal scholars scurrying for answers, and by the time they had their answers, she had moved on to new questions. As she grew, no one even hinted that there was something as terribly wrong with her as lacking an enchantment.
Into the introduction.
All right.
Now you got to do an introduction and say you got to say who you are and the name of the book
And why you wrote it.
Yeah.
and why you wrote it.
Yeah, my name's Alec McGilvray. All right, yeah, my name's Alec McGilvray, Unenchanted Princess. And I wrote this. It started back in '95 as a gift for my wife, as a novel being written one chapter a month. And at the end of the year, it wasn't finished, so I had to write more chapters. And then there were two characters who had got left wandering off into the wilderness, and you never heard from them again. So I had to tell their story, and then I had to tie everything together. And so about 4 years ago, I finished the last major revision, and then started the wonderful, joyful process of editing and revising and putting the chapters in the order that they are in now. And the cover is done by a very talented artist by the name of Cristina Castro Santiago, and it's a result of a contest that we had on worth1000.com for the design of the cover. And she was by far had the cover that we loved the most. There was lots of other terrific designs in the contest. So, Unenchanted Princess.